I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. In tonight's post-game episode, what we'll be discussing is how the Detroit Pistons lost this game 4. Going to be going over team performances, certain players we're going to be getting into, quarter notes, looking at the box scores, and opening up the show to you guys. Comments and questions like we always do, but let's get straight into today's podcast. So to start this first quarter, the Pistons decided they were just going to turn it over. We had so many turnovers in this first quarter. 6, believe it or not. You look, I think we finished with close to 20, or we did have 20 turnovers. And it didn't really look like we were ready to go. Cleveland looked like they were ready to go. Cleveland was just packing the paint defensively because I know the Pistons want to score in the paint because we're not really a good three-point shooting team. And nobody decided to guard James Harden early on. He was getting a lot of easy looks at 11 points very early on in this first quarter. And JB had to take a timeout after it was 13-5. Sarge Thompson picked up 2 fouls and Karis LeVert came in. And I just want to say this about Karis LeVert. Probably his best game of the season. His scoring was excellent. His defense off the bench was excellent. The Pistons go on a 10-2 run, and they get within 3. Like 18-15 was the score after Kenny Atkinson had to take a timeout. Tobias Harris was hitting some really big shots in this first quarter. Some post fadeaways over James Harden, getting into his spots. And, the defense stepped up once the second unit came in with Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, Karis LeVert, and Danis. And Pistons actually had a lead, believe it or not, 24-21 after 12 minutes of play, even with the 6 turnovers. They picked their shit up once the second unit came in and there's a little bit more consistent defense at the rim. They were doing good because of Isaiah Stewart in that second unit. Second quarter, JB Bickerstaff has to take a timeout. Duran did start the second quarter, and the little lead that the Pistons did have went away. The perimeter defense was just really bad, but that was because the Pistons wanted to pack the paint. They didn't want to have Cleveland have such a layup line. And I felt like we were very fortunate. We're very fortunate that, players like Sam Merrill had a bunch of opportunities to hit threes, and he's a good three-point shooter, and he wasn't hitting threes. Detroit did regain the lead once Isaiah Stewart was back into this game. And they go up 42-38 after a putback. Tobias Harris was really hot on a dunk that he probably should have shot free throws with. We'll get into the free throw stuff after I'm done going over these quarter notes. But Tobias Harris and Karis LeVert carried the scoring in the second quarter, and Pistons were able to have a 4-point lead going into halftime. Really thought Cade was going to get a technical foul after he did kind of get hacked, and he was right in Mark Davis's face. No foul call. Coming out of halftime, Cleveland just went on this incredible run. I have to give Cleveland credit. Donovan Mitchell had 4 points at halftime, just erupted in this game. But a big reason why they were able to go on the run that they did was because of Donovan Mitchell. 23 straight unanswered points. Set some kind of record, the broadcast said. You can't have that. You can't have a 23-0 run in the Eastern Conference semifinals when you're up 2-1. You just can't have it. I know JB took multiple timeouts. He took a timeout when it was an 8-0 run. Took another timeout when it was a 15-0 run. Paul Reed scored the Pistons' first points. And, they kind of settled down midway through the third. Karis started making some shots as well. And the lineup with Cade, Danis, Duncan, Karis, and Reed, they tried to get back into the game, and just an awful quarter by the Pistons. I felt like they were very fortunate to only be down 13 after 3. It was 90-77. Start the fourth, Jalen Duran did come back after Paul Reed just played his ass off. He came back at the 10-minute mark, and Donovan Mitchell just continued to get to the free throw line. He continued just to hit some big clutch shots. Game was basically over. All the Cavs starters go back to the bench, and you got Marcus Sasser, Danis Jenkins, and all those guys out there. They go on a 13-2 run, and Cleveland actually had to put their starters back into this game so they could close it out. You'll look at the final score, it was 112 to 103. But this game was over after the third quarter, in my personal opinion. I felt like Cleveland had all the momentum. Detroit did try to, put some defensive possessions together. They just couldn't fight back. Series is tied, 2 games apiece. Game 5 will be on Wednesday on ESPN. Still TBD on the time with that. We should probably know when the time is, probably by the time this podcast is over. But Cleveland is undefeated playing at home. Only silver lining I can give you guys is they haven't won a road playoff game, and you have home court advantage. So if this does go to 7 games, this does kind of go in the Pistons' favor, but you have to play much better in Game 5. You can't have a 23-0 run. You can't have quarters. Tonight was the third quarter. Last game was the second quarter against Cleveland. Just a game where I felt they could have won if they didn't have that third quarter, because I felt like even though they were turning the ball over in the first quarter, they were able to make stops and have a 3-point lead, still maintain a lead going into halftime up 4. But you let Donovan Mitchell just erupt because he got to the free throw line so much, but he was hitting big shots. But let's get into the box score, kind of go over this one. You guys could just see just the shooting night with everyone on this roster. Tobias Harris had 16 points, had 14 at half, just didn't hit a shot, hit one more shot. The remainder 2 quarters, he had 16 points. He was 6 out of 17 from the field, 2 out of 5 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. Really liked his effort in the first half. Second half, just really struggled to hit shots. The same shots that he was taking in the second half were going in the first half. So I'm not going to be too hard on Tobias because he's been such a big piece in the playoffs. He's been the number 2 option. Duncan Robinson had a really bad game by his standards. 29 minutes, 4 points. I get he wasn't really in foul trouble, but he did have 4 personal fouls. 1 for 2 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3. Like, you have to find him more than 2 shot attempts in a game. You really do. I know Cleveland's defense has been very stifling at times, but like that's your really only reliable 3-point shooter throughout the season. You got to find more than 2 shot attempts for Duncan Robinson. Jalen Duren, 27 minutes, 8 points, 4 to 8 from the field, 2 rebounds. 2 rebounds in 27 minutes. That's just unexcusable, you guys. Like, I don't know how much more you have to see out of him to the point where, like, maybe you do start him, but you keep his minutes under 20 minutes a game, because there's been so many instances in these playoffs where he's played one good playoff game, and that was a closeout game against Orlando where he had a double-double. 2 assists, 4 turnovers, 2 steals, 1 block. He was just unplayable. He's so unplayable. He started the game, I thought, a little bit more focused defensively, but I need more than 2 rebounds in 27 minutes. I really do. Cade Cunningham in 39 minutes had 19 points, 7 out of 16 from the field, 2 out of 5 from 3, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, 5 turnovers. Another game where he turned the ball over 5 times. Obviously, it's better than the 8 turnover game that he had, but needed to do a better job of taking care of the basketball. Asar Thompson only played 19 minutes, 4 points, 2 out of 3 from the field, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 4 turnovers. He had a really bad game by his standards too. The bench unit, Paul Reed, 14 minutes, he had 15 points. Productive, 4 rebounds in 14 minutes. Had more rebounds in 14 minutes than Jalen Duren did in 27 minutes. 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 turnover. He was great. He was great when he was out there. Isaiah Stewart played 7 minutes, had 4 points, 3 rebounds. He had 3 rebounds in 7 minutes. And he was a +6 in the plus minus. I thought when Stu was out there defensively, like, they look good. They look good. I don't really know why he only got 7 minutes. I would have played him a little bit more. This is me. Ron Holland in 8 minutes shot 1 time, It was a 3-point attempt. He had 3 rebounds in 8 minutes, 1 turnover, 1 steal. He was a plus 11 in the plus minus. Javonte Green played 6 minutes. He didn't do anything, but still finished the game with the plus 5. Karis LeVert, probably best game of the season that we wasted. 31 minutes, 24 points. He was excellent tonight. 10 out of 16 from the field, 3 out of 6 from 3, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, plus 15. Marcus Sasser played 3 minutes and he scored 7 points very quickly when the Pistons were, just kind of trying to get back into the game. He's always been productive when he does get playing time. He just doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. Danish Jenkins in 21 minutes scored 2 points, 0 for 4 from the field. It was just free throws that he made, 2 for 2, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 turnover, and he finished the game with a plus 6. Tolu Smith and Jazz Lanier did not play coaches' decisions, which don't really expect to see Tolu Smith or Jazz Lanier unless there's an injury or foul trouble. This is where we're going to get into it because I do have a problem with the free throws, and we'll get into it. So the Pistons shot a better percentage from the field. They shot 51% to Cleveland's 44%. They shot a better percentage from 3, where they made 10 out of 23 attempts, and they shot 43%. Cleveland shot 34% on 14 made threes on 41 attempts. Free throws. Straight up, like you guys can see the free throws. Cleveland shot 30 out of 34. Okay? That's a lot. The Pistons shot 9 out of 12. Donovan Mitchell had more free throw attempts tonight than the entire Detroit Pistons team. And I know JB said it on his post-game presser. He was pretty pissed off with it that since they've gotten to Cleveland, the whistle just hasn't been the same. Now, I'm not blaming the free throw discrepancy tonight for why they lost this game. I feel like they lost this game because that third quarter was just it was so terrible. I can't even think of a word off the top of my head to explain the third quarter without just swearing a bunch of swear words. And I'm trying not to swear on these post game podcasts, trying to keep them family friendly as much as I can. But Cleveland shot 88% from the free throw line. The Pistons shot 75% from the free throw line. You won the rebound battle by 2, but Cleveland did get 12 offensive rebounds. You got 11. Assisting was tied at 23 apiece. Stealing, Cavs got 11 steals to your 10. They got more blocks, 8-3, and Evan Mobley was a big part of that. Turnovers, 20 turnovers. You cannot have 20 turnovers in a playoff game and expect to win this. You just can't. You have to take way better care of the basketball. I felt like a lot of our turnovers were just so casual and lackadaisical, and like the passing was just like, yeah, you deserve to turn the ball over because you weren't really paying attention, or the DHOs that are bigs were throwing were just like kind of like bounce passes and like actually not like making sure the ball handler had the ball. It was just so bad, and the trapping that they did as well on Cade Cunningham and our ball handlers. Points conceded off turnovers: Pistons 25. Cleveland 20. Fast break points, Pistons won that one 12-6. Points in the paint, you won that one 50-34. Fouls, Pistons had 27 fouls, Cleveland had 15. But yeah, the free throws were just kind of wild. Now, I know ball handlers like James Harden and Donovan Mitchell are going to draw a lot of contact. And as soon as game 1 was over and Donovan Mitchell said, I'm not getting to the free throw line as much as I was during the regular season, I knew right then and there, officials hear it. Officials listen to post-game interviews with players. I'm not saying that, the officials were giving Cleveland a favorable whistle, but, that's a big discrepancy when you look at it. Like, I don't think a player should average, more free throws than an entire team. I felt like the Pistons were drawing contact, they just weren't getting calls, but that's not the reason why we lost with the free throw discrepancy. We lost because we had a crappy third quarter. But I do want to open up the show to comments and questions. I see a lot of you guys have left comments. I'm just going to take a quick break, and then we'll have a chill rest of the podcast talking about what you guys are commenting, and we'll outlook game 5 and what the Pistons have to do to go back up in this series, because now it's 2 games apiece with Cleveland and Detroit. We will be right back after a quick break, you guys. Okay, guys, we're back. Let's get into the Q&A section of our podcast where we open up the show for any comments and questions, overall thoughts with this game. I do want to get into a couple of comments that I did see. I did star them, so let's get into it. Uh, Marquez, what is it going to take for JB Bickerstaff to play B-ball Paul more when he plays? Positive plays simply happens. You know what? I really don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take a performance where you only get 2 rebounds in 27 minutes. I don't know if it's going to take the blown drop coverages all series. I don't know what it's going to take. Um, I don't know if you can, straight up start Paul Reed. I wouldn't be opposed to starting Isaiah Stewart, even though it seems like he doesn't really have the same lift on his block attempts. I know he did a story with Cody Davis saying that he is 100% healthy and stop the speculation. There has been speculation from other Detroit Pistons podcasters and media members that they think that Isaiah Stewart is 100% healthy. I really don't know what's going on. I liked the defense from Stu tonight when he was out there for the 7 minutes. I thought he was impactful, and we were much quicker in rotating and drop coverages. We were rebounding the ball. We were boxing out. But I don't know what it's going to take for JB Bickerstaff to play Paul Reed more. I tweeted, I said, don't wait until the third quarter to play Paul Reed. What does he do? He waits till the third quarter to play Paul Reed. It's frustrating as a fan when you see your starting center just give really lackadaisical effort, getting out rebounded, just kind of jogging very casually up and down the court. I know they were trying to get him going, get his offensive going, but it just hasn't been it. I know JB talked with the Pistons media yesterday talking about like it's not just the points with Jalen Duren. So many people are obsessed with the points. It's not really the points that we're concerned with. It's just the overall effort. It's getting out rebounded. It's only grabbing 2 rebounds in 27 minutes in an Eastern Conference semifinals game. Like it's just not enough. And this is a guy that wants to get paid. Like you're not going to get paid a max contract grabbing 2 rebounds in 27 minutes of play. You're just not. I'd be surprised if you got a mid-level exception at that point. Like you want to get paid, you got to play like it. You got to give way more effort. You got to be focused. You can't just keep blowing defensive coverages. Or my favorite was he wasn't even paying attention in the second half of a play. Cade finds him wide open and he's looking at the rim. Like so frustrating during the playoffs with Jalen Duren. Again, like obviously teams are game planning for him. I don't want to pick on him, but he has just been really a tough watch as a Piston fan. Like you said, Paul Reed comes in positive, very short amount of time, and he puts double figures and he grabs more rebounds. Again, I don't know what it's going to take. I don't think they bench him, though. I really don't. I think he still starts, but maybe you don't have him playing close to 30 minutes a game. Maybe he's only playing 15 to 20 minutes, and you just roll with Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed. Crap, I would even see what Tolu Smith can give me because I know the kid's a good rebounder. Like, that's where I'm at as a Piston fan, and it might sound reactionary after a game where you were up 2-1 and now it's two games apiece in the series, but you need much better effort for a guy that wants to get paid like a max player. That wasn't a max level effort. That was like a bench player effort tonight. I want to get into another comment, and this one comes from, sorry if I do butcher this, Blood of the I'm not even gonna attempt it. But his comment says this team has no talent outside of Cade, and this series makes it abundantly clear the Cavs have talent but no heart, and are tying up the series. What happens when the Pistons meet a team with both? It's a great observation by you. I think when you talk about just overall talent, Cleveland has more. Cleveland has more talent. They have a dynamic backcourt. They have a good front court. I think when you're just talking about stardom power, like the Pistons have Cade Cunningham. Obviously, Jalen Durham made an all-star team this year, but Cade's probably going to make a first-team All-NBA. Durham might actually make third-team All-NBA by the time the playoffs are over. But what does happen when you have a team like you got the Knicks waiting in the Eastern Conference Finals? The Knicks have just as much talent as Cleveland, if not more, and they have guys in Mitchell Robinson who are just absolute dogs on the glass. Karl Anthony Towns has been way more productive under Mike Brown. The Knicks are just firing on all cylinders. What does happen if you do see a team like the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, even though you did beat them in the regular season, it's not the same Knicks team. They have figured stuff out offensively. I think what does happen is it becomes more difficult to try to make the NBA Finals. And I think right now, I after like the first two games, I will say I felt pretty good going into Cleveland for game 3 and game 4. I felt like we could have at least stole one, but it's just the effort. It's the third quarter in tonight's game. It was the second quarter in game 3. You just have these uphill battles where you try to come back, down 15 to 20 points. You can't keep doing that in the playoffs. You have to execute for a full 48 minutes. I do agree with you. I don't think the Cleveland Cavaliers are a team that have like all this team chemistry and been together for multiple years. Like Donovan Mitchell, obviously they traded for. They just got James Harden, right? Um, it's a team that has not won a road playoff game yet. It's a team that had a lot of injuries this year, but they were kind of flirting with in the play-in tournament when they were injured. I think as a team, and you finish as the number 1 seed, like you should have a pretty easy time dealing with Cleveland, but they're just exposing you. Like, during the first half, they were just passing the ball, trying to attack Jalen Duren because they know that he's a weak target out there. They were trying to target Duren in drop coverages, and they kept doing it to the point where JB had to sub him out and put Stu in. It just gets to a point where you have to execute your strengths, and you can't wait when you're down 15 points. You just can't wait. The substitutions, I think, need to be a little bit quicker and faster if you want to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals and eventually try to compete for an NBA championship, right? Because you don't know what the Eastern Conference is going to look like next year with a healthy Tyrese Halliburton. Which, all jokes aside, I can't believe the Pacers lost their pick off of that Zubac trade, and Washington won the lottery, which I know it's off topic, and we haven't talked draft lottery in quite some time, but how Washington trading for Trae Young and Anthony Davis, getting the first overall pick, crazy, man, crazy. And that's all I'll say about the draft lottery. Can't believe that they got the first overall pick. But getting back into this game and just being a little bit more intentional with your rotations. You can't wait until the third quarter to play Paul Reed. I would have played him in the second quarter personally. He brings energy. And even the broadcast said like they only play Paul Reed when they're down. Like I don't think Paul Reed is a type of center where it's like break the glass type of emergency center. I think he's a center that needs to be in the rotation consistently all season. We saw Paul Reed only play if there was foul trouble or injuries. He's shown in the playoffs that he's not afraid of the moment, and he produces. It just gets to a point with JD right now where he's not bringing it, and you need production out of that center spot. You really do. Morpheus, I'm not a Karras fan, but he looked good tonight. Honestly, man, probably the best game of the season for Caris LeVert. It sucks that we wasted it because he was really helping the Pistons get back into this game and gave him a lead. Probably just the most productive I've seen him, just, getting to his spots, hitting threes, playing some just absolute great defense on James Harden, had some deflections. I don't know if we're going to see that in game 5 with Karras, but if we do, I'm not mad at it. I hope we do. I hope we see a little bit more consistency out of him, but it just gets to a point where like when you have a performance of a bench player that hasn't really been that consistent, it sucks when he just has a game like this and you're like, oh, like where was this? But again, It's frustrating as a fan. Another comment from Morpheus. We really need to get a second superstar in the offseason. They can send Duran packaging anyone else except Cade, Asar, Stu, Paul Reed. That way we keep our defensive core and add some shooting. I know I've talked about this during the playoffs, and the front office has been extremely consistent with this message as it does relate to getting a secondary option next to Cade Cunningham. Trajan Langdon has said we're evaluating. He's got 2 years of data. He's got 2 years of tape with this roster. It would not surprise me if you do see the Detroit Pistons make a big trade. Now, second superstar, I don't know if it's going to be a superstar, but it could be a guy that could average 20. It could be a guy that is a two-way forward. It could be a guy that plays in the backcourt. I don't know if it's going to be a superstar. I know I saw some Pistons fans see the Giannis news today and thinking that we should go trade for Giannis. I'm probably good on a Giannis trade. Those legs and calves have a lot of miles on them. They really do. But I do expect the Detroit Pistons to make a trade where they get a secondary option this summer. Now, whether that's through the NBA draft, whether that's, before free agency, during free agency, I'm not really entirely sure what their game plan is. But I will say I do expect Trajan Langdon and this front office to make a move. So you don't have Cade having to take, 20, 25 shots every night. He can kind of have a co-star next to him. Series is going to 7. If it does go to 7, the Knicks are going to have 9 days off. They'll be pretty fresh. If this series does go to 7, I predicted this series was going to go to 6. Hopefully it is in the Detroit Pistons' favor. But the series going to 7 would be not ideal because you were up 2-0. I really thought you could have taken at least one game away from Cleveland on the road. Wayne, how on earth do you let Mitchell get 40 in the second half? To his credit, I will say he came out extremely aggressive. I thought the Pistons did a pretty good job defending him in the first 2 quarters. The third quarter in particular, I didn't really feel like we were as aggressive when the ball was in his hands and, he saw one shot go in and then it turns into an 8-0 Donovan Mitchell run, hitting a 3 and then getting to the free throw line and hitting a mid-range shot. It's just okay. He's the type of player where when you watch him, you know that he's capable of scoring 30 on any given night, but it doesn't help when the man's getting 15 free throws in a game. But Donovan Mitchell is one of those players that, he can go for 50 at any given time, but I really don't know how it happened. I felt like the defense was a little bit soft compared to the first 2 quarters, but you have to tip your cap to Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs for getting this one tonight. We have another comment about Jalen Duran and Sar from Pershing Doughboy. These playoffs have shown us that Duran and Asar together does not work. I've seen this comment from other, talent evaluators. Sam Vecini is probably one of the most well-known media figures, I'll call him, and a talent evaluator that has said this consistently. And his biggest message has always been neither of them are shooters. I think it does become very difficult to have these two playing together, especially when Asar is having a very difficult time, finding those backdoor cuts or finding those lobs or those transition opportunities. It's very glaring. The one thing with Asar that is extremely frustrating, and it's just nitpicky by me, is there's been so many possessions in this series where he is very reluctant to shoot the ball. He'll pass it back out to a teammate. I think the next step in development with him is, developing a mid-range jump shot, being a little bit more aggressive, going up strong, instead of just passing it back out to the bias or passing it back out to Cade or Duran. there are a lot of possessions in this series where he's been very passive. And that's I know he's young right now. It's not really a part of his game as being a jump shooter. Not really giving him an excuse, but I just know, behind the scenes, like they're still working on that. It's just not ready yet. As for Duran, this year, most of his offensive game has been lobs and dribble drives, and Cleveland is taking away both. They've taken away his dribble drives, they've taken away lobs, basically. So he doesn't really have a face up game. He had a jump shot, which was I was kind of surprised he took it very early in the first half. I was like, okay. He's not a perimeter shooter yet. I do know Duran does work on his mid-range game quite a bit, but again, it's still a work in progress with both of these guys. If they want to make a work long term, you're going to have at least one out of the two of these guys, if not both, develop some sort of offensive game. Whether that's a star hitting more corner threes or becoming a better mid-range jump shooter, or Jalen Duran developing a good 15 to 18-foot jump shot and having more pick and pop opportunities with Cade Cunningham when defenses sag off on him. But again, both of these kids are extremely young. I do know from talking to reporters and talking to people in private that it is something that is a behind the scenes thing. But it is very frustrating when you have two out of the five players in your starting lineup that aren't good perimeter shooters. And it does make it very difficult when you're not getting defensive stops and you're not able to kind of play that transition game, which they did all regular season. Just cool and Vaughn, how does everyone out rebound our starting center? Rebounding to me is just an effort stat. Look, you got to go up there and want it. We saw game 1 and 2. Danish Jenkins was just soaring up for rebounds because he wanted it more. At the end of the day, players that are good rebounders is because they want to go get it. Duran right now just has not wanted to, go get these rebounds. Again, I don't really know what's going on with him. I don't know if there's off the court stuff that we don't know about. I don't know if it's family issues. I'm not giving him an excuse, but you never really know what a player is going through. Have to remember they're human beings just like us at the end of the day, but his effort has been really bad in terms of rebounding the basketball. But I think the reason why he's getting out rebounded is you got guys like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and even, Donovan Mitchell that just want it more. There was a clip of JB Bickerstaff when we were at home saying like Donovan Mitchell should not be grabbing rebounds over you. And he was right. Like you got to box out and grab those things. Like you're 6'10", 250. You're probably the most opposing player on this whole series. Like you should just be bullying a skinny Evan Mobley that you got a good 40 pounds on. You shouldn't be getting bullied by Jared Allen. He has a very limited game. He's just lobs and little floaters. Like you should be handling Jared Allen very easily, but hasn't really been the case in this series so far. What do you think about Herter getting time? Is he off the injury list yet? I do know he was questionable. He was a participant at shoot around, but he didn't play. I don't know when Kevin Herter is going to be coming back. If he was healthy, I would assume him and Karras would be splitting minutes. But even in the Magic series, very limited. He wasn't really effective. I don't know if it's because he had an injury at the time. But he just hasn't really been himself personally, from what I've seen. I want to get into a couple more comments and questions, and then we'll probably wrap up this podcast. I don't want to keep you guys on for too much longer. I do appreciate you guys that are watching this podcast. If you guys could, just a favor, if you're watching live on YouTube, hit that like button. It does help push out more Detroit Pistons content for Pistons fans just like you guys. And if you're an audio listener and you do like the Pistons podcast that we are providing, you guys leave us a 5-star review. If there's something you want us to improve on, if there are guests that you want us to have on during this postseason or during the summer, I am open to it. I do expect to do, some offseason content, draft coverage, stuff like that. But I want to get into a couple more comments and questions with you guys. So I did see a comment about, I want to find it. Hold on. Give me a second. This is terrible podcasting. I apologize. Hold on. Here we go. This comes from Dwayne. JB is letting loyalty and afraid to get hurt feelings get in the way of winning. Duran has had half of Paul's production in twice the minutes. Paul Reed, a real coach, plays the guy who impacts winning. And again, like I kind of go back to what he said. I don't know if you guys had saw I believe Omari Sankofa, who's a really good Detroit Pistons beat reporter for the Free Press. He had kind of asked about Duran's productivity. And JB was just kind of talking about, like, it's all the little stuff he does for us. But I agreed, Dwayne, like maybe you don't play him 30 minutes, maybe you play him 15 to 20 and you just roll with Paul Reed or Isaiah Stewart. Obviously, I think Paul Reed has probably been the most productive center throughout this series, but I don't know if you're going to be playing Paul Reed, 30 minutes a game. I just don't think they're just going to straight bench Jalen Duran. I still think they will start him, but I do think that the loyalty thing I agree with, because he kept mentioning like how good he was in the regular season when it is the postseason. He has not had a good postseason. I think when your playoffs are on the line, you have to make adjustments and you have to consider making lineup changes. I don't know if JB does that. I'd be very surprised if Duran was out of the starting lineup for Game 5. I really would. But I think it gets to a point where like you have so much data in these first two rounds of the playoffs, and Duran just hasn't really been himself. And it's not the same production that we saw in the regular season. And that's to be expected because teams are game planning for you. They're trying to take away your strengths, and they have attacked his weaknesses really hard. And I think with Paul Reed, you get more production on both ends of the floor, and you're able to go on these runs and have good defensive quarters. So if it were me personally, I'm not playing Duran 30 minutes a game. I'm playing him maybe 15, 20 at the most. Maybe he has a good game, but I would roll with Paul Reed a little bit more. I wouldn't wait until the third quarter to play him. I think I saw a tweet, which I really agree with. You got to stop treating Paul Reed like an emergency glass type of center. Use him as an actual backup if you want a little bit more offensive production in the game. But I do want to wrap up this post-game podcast. I do appreciate everyone that does tune into these and ask the questions. I do apologize if I didn't answer one of your guys' questions. If you want to talk basketball after this podcast is over, feel free to hit us up on any of our social media channels. The DMs are always open to Pistons fans like you guys. But again, the Detroit Pistons lose this one against the Cavs. 112-103 was the final score. Game 5 will be on Wednesday. ESPN has picked up the game. Again, I hate the playoff schedule, man. I hate that I need 3 subscriptions to watch playoff basketball. That's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day. But we will see you guys on Wednesday. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.